Greetings. I'm the Reverend Jen Fenner of Epworth United Methodist Church in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I'm grateful that you joined me today as we're following through the spiritual quest outlined by Beth Moore in her book and looking in parallel at the way that Jesus' life, his journey into Jerusalem, to the upper room, to the cross, to the empty tomb, was also a spiritual quest and one that he made consciously with his eyes open. As we get closer and closer to the crucifixion, we see just how aware Jesus was of what he was doing. And in Mark 14, starting at verse 53, right after Jesus has been betrayed by Judas in the Garden of Gethsemane and taken by the guards, it says in Mark 14:53, they took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes were assembled. And Peter followed at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. And Peter stood with the guards, warming himself at the fire. And now the chief priest and the whole council started looking for testimony so that they could put Jesus to death. But they couldn't find any. It says many gave testimony that was false, but even their false testimony didn't agree. Some said that we heard him say, I'll destroy the temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands. But even their lies, their false testimony didn't agree. So finally, it says in verse 60, the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you? And in verse 61 of Mark 14, it says Jesus was silent and did not answer. So again, the high priest asked Jesus, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? In verse 62, Jesus finally answers. He says, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And it says the high priest was so disturbed by what Jesus said that he tore his clothes and said, why do we need any more witnesses? You've all heard Jesus' blasphemy. What is your decision? And all of them condemned him as deserving death. And they spit on him and blindfolded him and struck him and said to him, prophesy. And the guards also took him and beat him. The wrestle that Jesus has in this moment is a different wrestle. He's already been betrayed. He's already been taken by force. He's standing before all of the religious officials, the high priest and the chief priest and the council. And they're trying to figure out if he's violating, offending what they understand to be the faithful word. And all these people are making witness against him, and none of their stories agree. And Jesus first wrestles with whether to speak or whether to stay silent. I've always been amazed at the fact that there are times when God tells us, don't even make a defense. I'm the one who will interact. I'm the one who'll speak for you. Just remain quiet. And in verse 61, it says Jesus was quiet when he asked if he had any testimony to offer against himself. And then finally, when the high priest asked Jesus, are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of the Blessed One? Jesus simply said, I am. And you'll see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming with the clouds of heaven. And that was enough for the priest to tear his clothes, for the people to accuse him and claim that he was blaspheming, to believe that he deserved death, to spit, to blindfold, to strike, to mock, to beat, and to take him away. Have you ever felt like you've waited for the time that God told you to speak? Waited for the moment when you couldn't do anything more than simply say, yes, this is who God has made me to be. And you felt in that moment the judgment, the rejection, maybe even an intensity of casting out. Sometimes in our journey, it feels like we go backwards in order to go forwards. Sometimes we wonder why God lets us wrestle so much. Sometimes we wonder why the very people who claim to understand and follow the God that we know are the people that end up hurting us the most. And yet, in the midst of all of this, Jesus was speaking to the power of God, the Son of Man, seated at the right hand and coming with the clouds of heaven. Maybe in the moments of deepest wrestle, when it feels like everything we know turns against us, maybe in those moments, we need to just remember the confidence with which Jesus said, I am. I am the one that you say that I am. And I stand in a power and a promise that is deeper than any of the accusations you could hurl against me. Sometimes the sense of belonging, of knowing who we are, of standing in God's power, gives us the ability to face whatever it is that comes, even when it feels like we're losing. Today, I invite you to consider that in some of the moments where you have felt most like you are losing the journey, losing the struggle, losing the fight, like your wrestle has not produced anything that you needed it to produce, those might be the moments that you're stepping into the fullness of God's power. And as you do, trust that there is a God, the great I am, the one who is the true Son of Man, the one who sits at the right hand of the fullness of the divine power, and the one that is even coming, has come and will come again. God, thank you that our faith journey is not marked by what feels like success or victory. Thank you that who we are is not determined by what the others say or believe about us. Help us to know when to be quiet and when to speak, God, and help us to trust in our wrestle with this world, in our wrestle to follow after you. Help us to trust that you have the power and the intention to lead us to true victory. Amen.